It's great to welcome back to the program today Frank Meeink, who is a former neo-Nazi who we actually met. Every time I feel like it's important to tell the story, Frank, we met because you and I years ago were scheduled to be on Dr. Drew's CNN headline news show on the same day. They
Right.
introduced, we are going to talk now to former neo-Nazi Frank Meeink, and they put up a picture of me as a very clean cut, maybe the most clean cut former neo-Nazi ever. And then we figured out, oh, okay, they actually put up the wrong picture, but that's how we got in touch.
Right. And then you at first made some derogatory statements about how that you would never, how would a neo-Nazi ever look like you? And I said, wait a minute, I'm just
Well,
as good looking.
people pointed out that my look was a little bit too chipper and clean cut, but I think that that was other people, not me, who were saying that. So listen, Frank, I mean, I don't even know where to start at this point, but I guess one place would be, in light of the recent shootings that we've been seeing and the increased radicalization that's heavily anti-immigrant. You and I have talked about the anti-Semitic radicalization that you experienced when you were a neo-Nazi, but we haven't talked so much about the anti-immigrant stuff. Was that a big part of your radicalization?
Yes. I mean, that's fear. I mean, that's one of the main points of fear is that there are going to be people here now who are going to come and take our jobs. I mean, that was it's a huge part of the building of the fear of that we're losing our country because of this. And what I mean by we, I mean white people were losing our country. So that was the anti-immigrant was the anti-immigration and is a huge part of the movement itself.
And so
And
now we're seeing this like division between there's the good immigrants and then the not so good immigrants. So we heard about like S-hole countries. We heard about like we want people from Norway, but not from Haiti or whatever. When you were in, was the talk specifically about immigrants from certain places?
absolutely, it was about African immigrants that were coming over, and also, the South American immigrants that were coming up to, to destroy our country, as we would say.
And
That's
so
what we.
when you now see like the manifesto that was left in the El Paso shooting and you see some of that phraseology, like does the language ring a bell to you?
It's exactly the same verbiage. It's exactly the same rhetoric, word for word stuff that we had said in the '90s. Again, we talked about this before. How the alt right is just rebranding itself. It has to rebrand itself because it can't say it's just like we were in the '90s. So and that's why it's like the alt right now. They're kind of classy it up a little bit, but they're still the same rhetoric, the same hatred, the same fear is all there. I mean, just think that there's people that are down in Phoenix who go out and they are getting these militias now, and they go out and they shoot up all the water tanks now that people leave for the immigrants who are coming over, again, illegally, but they're still human beings. And these guys are shooting up water tanks that these churches are leaving out for them so they don't die of thirst. And so, like, there's ways that these guys are really starting to gather momentum. And I think they're also, and this is not, I can't say for a fact, but I'm feeling that there's, some killings have been going on because it's the desert, it's a big desert out there. So they go around and they look for illegal immigrants coming, and they're their own little militias. And so I know they shoot up the water tanks. That's definite. And so I wonder what else they shoot up when they find an immigrant coming across the border.
One of the things that I've been talking about is that there's sort of like a line or kind of like a threshold where someone can have a lot of these anti-immigrant and radicalized ideas that you had, but not act on them in terms of physical violence. Like they can believe this stuff, but they don't actually translate it into real world violence. And then something happens and some people go beyond and now they're doing real world violence. Can you talk about from when you were in, what was it that seemed to separate the people who just had the ideology from the ones who were willing to go and do the real world violence?
Yes, I mean, that's the guys who do the violence are, it goes from the top down. It's the guys that are higher up are usually the more violent ones. And then the more that you get down to the less guys that are just joining, then you start to find, the more of the guys who still have a little bit of compassion left in themselves and have a little bit of empathy left. So it's the higher ups who are doing the more of the violence. It's not like they're sending out hitmen now. It's So the head militia guys are the guys that are doing all this violence. That's kind of answering your question in a way.
That's interesting. So now with the internet, the radicalization is not happening as much in a social group. I mean, you talked about, based on your childhood and everything that was going on in your life, how there was like a significant social element to your radicalization. Now with the
Right.
internet, a lot of these individuals are being radicalized by websites and rhetoric from people that they never meet personally. Does that make it more dangerous in a way, or is it just different, or how should we think about that?
No, it's a lot more dangerous. It's
Really?
more dangerous in absolutely, because the lone wolves. You have people that want to be Timothy McVeigh, who they idolize Timothy McVeigh. They idolize these shooters. You go on all their websites right now. It's, in their chat rooms, they're idolizing these people, and that's building more people that want to be like me. That I wanted to be idolized. I mean, I had nothing in life. I mean, and when someone said that God wanted me to do these bad things to people, it was, a way of me having a purpose in life. So I don't want to say idolize them, but you want to have a purpose. And now these guys have a purpose by just going out and shooting up a school or shooting up a synagogue or shooting up something that's, they're all getting demoralized now because of it. So, and it all goes back to the lone wolf of Timothy McVeigh, and that's the thing that got me out of the movement. Well, I was already out, but that was the thing that made me think I need to rethink what I'm doing, because of the Timothy McVeigh's type stuff. The fireman with the dead little girl in his arm is the picture that will forever last in my brain. That's my rhetoric. My rhetoric that I preach help him form his beliefs to do that. Not per se me, but I was definitely a leading person in the movement at the time when he was getting radicalized himself. So.
This seems super important to me, this lone wolf thing you're talking about, because in the last 5 years, it's become super popular for people who don't want to accept that there is this radicalization going on to say it was only a lone wolf. We don't have to worry as much because it's not part of some organized group. You're pointing out something really important, which is this is just a result of the fact that the internet has become as ubiquitous as it is. It's going to be a lot of lone wolves because you no longer need to do what Frank Meeink did, which was you were part of like a physical social group. That doesn't
Right.
make it less dangerous. If anything, we should be more worried about how easily these lone wolves are being radicalized.
That's right. I mean, they're not putting in the work that I used to put in. I mean, Lord Jesus. I mean, no, it's scary in the fact that it just goes one person who can just have an incident with something at school. I mean, that's where I've been getting a lot of calls where kids get into it just because they're having trouble at school, like I did with the black kids at school. And then next thing you know, now he's going on these websites and venting and finding other people who match what he's saying. And again, we're dealing with people that are full of fear, who are egomaniacs with no self-esteem. I mean, that's what you're dealing with. That's what you deal with radicalized kids all across the world. We now have had organizations where we meet and talk to other former jihadists, former Farsh. I mean, you name it. We have former IRA bombers. We all got together in Ireland and met and tried to figure out what's going on. And it's all the same. They're the same makeup as I was. I was a kid who had nothing in life, and now someone says that God wants me to be this person, and God wants me to be on his team, which he wanted me to ruin Sodom and Gomorrah. So with the internet, that would have been a lot more easier for me to be radicalized. I would have been, who knows where I would have been if there would have been the internet when I was younger. So.
When you talk to the other formers from different extremist groups, is there any common thread that links what got them out? Like you talked about around the Timothy McVeigh time, you were already starting to be pulled out of it. Has there been anything that you've determined that seems to have been a common factor in all of these different extremists that left their respective movements?
Yeah, it's empathy, finding empathy again,
From other
finding
people?
from other people, and that's what I always say. Like when I never marched in the Klan rallies, when I marched with the Klan and marched with the neo-Nazis and people threw bottles at us, I never ducked the bottle and thought, whoa, I better rethink my beliefs here. I never ducked the bottle and thought that. I thought, they're my enemy. So when people started to talk to me and be real with me and started having conversations that were heartfelt and real, and later on would make me question my beliefs. Like there was a bunch of people like Keith Brookstein, who was the Jewish antique dealer, who kind of really cemented my final change. Was one of those guys who he didn't care what I believed. He just cared I didn't break his furniture, because I worked in his furniture store. And, but he was just a good man, and he talked to me. He talked to me like a human being, something that no one had done. Everyone else wanted to argue with me all the time about my beliefs. That's all everyone wanted to do, is believe that stupid stuff. Well, I heard that my whole life. When someone just started talking to me about me just being me and standing by myself and being a human being and not being stupid like I thought I was, because my parents had always told me I was, I came up pretty hard. So it was that type of human interaction that made me start to question it. And that's the same thing across the board with everyone, is they had some type of interaction where some of the people met the people that they did terrorist attacks to. They met the people and then were forgiven. And that was a huge thing, is because what we need to do is we need to forgive when these guys get out of the neo-Nazi world. I know people hate to hear this, but we have to forgive them. We can't say we don't want them around anymore, but when they try to get out of it, then we shun them more. I can't believe you believe that stuff. Like,
right. Well, this comes down to this idea of like being irredeemable at a certain point, right? That people get to a certain point and then society decides, doesn't matter what you do from this point forward, everything you've done up until now makes you irredeemable, which is one of the problems arguably with like the criminal justice system that we have in the country. But you're saying that if people become irredeemable, then they're almost like lost forever in some sense, because what they need is that redemption in some way.
Absolutely. They need to be the good guy. They need to be on the right team. And so what I always I felt that I was on the good team when I was a neo-Nazi. I thought I was for the white race and that everything was coming to destroy it. But once I started to realize that, like, what I was believing was a bait and switch. I was bait and switch to believe that I was proud of a heritage, but we never talked about our heritage. We always talked about everyone else's heritage. Like, I was bait and switched into this this movement, so that when I started to realize that I was not looked at as being dumb or stupid or whatever for believing this stuff, but people just said, I understand why you believe that. I get it. I understand that. And that came from people of all races who came to me and said it. And same thing with the people that are also formers now. There's, I don't know if you heard on my CNN interview where I talked about the Donald Trump and taking money away from Life After Hate, which is an organization I helped found it.
Yeah.
It's a great organization. And he took that money away, $400,000. He took it away because we wanted more money to go towards Muslim extremists. Well, look where that's gotten us now. Like, now we're starting in the hole to get back now, to catch back up to this, because they've been so worried about Muslim extremists, which haven't killed nowhere near as much people as the right wing have, the right has. So
let's talk a little bit about Trump. So last time you were on, I mean, it's crazy because when I had Richard Spencer on, the white nationalist, and when I had you on, you both had similar views about the signals that Trump sends. And both of you, to summarize very crudely, said, he's not using all of the language that a real white nationalist would necessarily be using. But if you know the talking points, you see the signals, and that's enough to get people coalesced around him. Do you still feel that way? The term invasion, infestation, all of that stuff? Uh-oh, it looks like we lost Frank here. Frank, can you, Frank put us on hold. Oh, you put us on hold there, Frank. Oh, now you're back. Okay, we lost you at a key moment there.
So sorry.
No problem.
You try and get this thing right out. So,
yep.
So anyway, I want to get back to this point because this is a very important point.
Yeah. So, the signals that are sent by the language that's being used. So
what I have to do, what I think of him, what I think of his responses for the shooting was, he was a very scripted in his response that white supremacists needs to be, disavowed or something. He said, this doesn't hold true to what he really believes, or what I've seen from his tweets that he's tweeted about Baltimore and about other people that are people of color, and make them go back to their own country. Like, that's the same stuff that we used to say, go back to your own country, even though black people have been here longer than mostly all white people's heritage have, because their heritage was here by slavery, obviously. So their heritage was here a lot longer than us. So they should be telling us to go back to our country. But, well, let's never mind that part, or let's go with, his wife, who's, Yes. I think she might be a Russian spy. I swear to you. I don't want to get into
Well,
kind
I've
of
not seen evidence
conspiracy
of that. Yeah,
stuff.
listen, but so what you're saying is super important, which is, and by the way, Frank, your camera's just bouncing all over the place. So if there's anything you can do about it to steady it, that would be
Yeah.
awesome. It's just bouncing up and down. One of the things you're pointing out is if you've been paying attention to everything that Trump has been saying for years, and then this one time he says we should disavow white supremacy, it doesn't totally hold true in a sense. You're still going by all the things he's been saying for the last 2.5 years.
That's right. Absolutely. And it's a fact that he is, sorry about that. My camera's down. So, it's a fact that he says things that are exactly what we were saying back then. It's a true fact. It's not. Um, he uses the same type of rhetoric, same type of fear tactics that Fox News uses all the time. Fox News is legendary in that they always are fear-based stuff. Fox and Friends in the morning is not very friendly. It's not very friendly. It's not white at all. It's very much they're coming for us. They're coming in droves from their the convoy was coming up here with all those people. So it's just it's really bad. It's really I'm really worried about where we're headed now as a country. And I think the last time I might have been on, I might have been more optimistic because I thought that maybe Donald Trump would be more of a man than say, that this stuff is wrong and stop trying to stick to a base of people that are just blindly following him. So,
Well, one of the things you said before we started today's interview is that you now are talking to your kids about not fire or smoke at school and how to get out, but these shooter scenarios. What is it like? I mean, to some degree, you're talking to your kids about how to protect themselves from shooters that have potentially been radicalized by the ideology that once held you so closely radicalized. What is that like?
oh, sorry, David. Sorry, trying to get this thing here. So, okay. So I got a plant in the way. All right. So what I have to say about that is my kids told me that yesterday we were talking about this, and they said that they do these shooting things that were at school where they have to go if there's a shooter in their school to stay in their class, and they're going to lock them doors and all this stuff. So um, we used to prepare for Russians to come in and attack us. We used to prepare, like when I was a little kid, I remember we used to go and hide under our desk in case there's a nuclear bomb, like that was really going to save us, but whatever.
Yeah.
Now we're prepared for Americans coming in and killing our own people in our schools. Like that's what we're preparing our kids for. And it's all due to, gun violence and mental health, mental illness and stuff that you talk about all the time, how we could talk about mental illness, but we're cutting funding to real mental illness issues and to places that are for mental health. They're cutting funding and they're saying that we don't want to pay for insurance for that stuff, but also now we want to make sure everyone has guns. So it's just weird that my kids are planning on another American coming in and killing them. Like that's what they talked about it to me yesterday about what they've been doing at school, about their drills and stuff. So and I told them just to keep running. If they're coming to your school, just keep running no matter what. Just keep running. Don't stay still. And so it was just really a real conversation you have with kids nowadays is about other Americans coming in and killing them, not
And
terrorists.
Frank, knowing how you became radicalized, what do you do with your kids to prevent them from being sucked in by any of these movements?
Teaching them empathy from day one. In fact, I mean, me and my daughter still, when we walk, we always pick up trash on the way. Just to give you an example, every day when we walk to the store, we always pick up a piece of trash, even if it's not on my property, it's on someone else. We just do it because it makes our community a better place. And you just do it, no matter if you see someone throw something, you'll pick it up. And just by teaching them those small basic things of respect for other people's property or other people's just the whole community in one community. And so my kids, like the N-word is not acceptable in our home at all, like not acceptable at all. Like as white people, I think we abused that word and we should never be able to use it again. I think it might be a reparation thing. But anyway, that word is not able to be used in our home. And also we have friends of all. I mean, we have my daughter's best friend is the best friend is a gay black kid who's this, he's just the light of our life. I mean, he comes over and he just, that's her best friend. And that's, I hopefully due to the way that we have raised her to accept everyone just as who they are.
Frank Meeink, always a pleasure talking to you, Frank. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your insights, and look forward to having you back on again.
Sorry about the camera. I'll get the camera next time. Sorry, buddy.
Thanks, Frank.